Okay, so today we will talk about what is called the Chinese remainder theorem. So the typical problem is the following: find the smallest natural number n such that n gives a remainder of 3 when divided by 8 and gives a remainder of 10 on division by 21. Okay, so let's try and see what we would do to solve a problem like this. So firstly, let's rewrite this using our notation of congruences. So recall the first condition just becomes n is congruent to 3 modulo 8, and the second condition is that n is congruent to 10 modulo 21. And so this is really a system of simultaneous congruences. Okay, we are trying to solve two congruences which need to be simultaneously true. So let's try and go about this in one way, which is a sort of a brute force approach. So here's a trial and error or a brute force method. Is the following: you write out all possible solutions to one of the congruences. Okay, so list all solutions to one of the two congruences. For instance, here let me pick n is congruent to 10 modulo 21, and let's write out all the values of n. So recall from last time, this just means the following, that so let me write down some values of n here. So I'm only looking for natural numbers, so n equals 10 is one possibility. And then since it needs to be congruent 10 mod 21, all you need to do to get the rest of the solutions is to keep adding multiples of 21. So I have 10, I add 21 to it, I get 31. I add 21 to this, I get 52, then I get 73, and so on. We write out a few more: 94, 115, 136, 157, and so on. The list keeps going on, but for now I'll stop there. And now what do? Well, we remember need to also solve the second congruence. So this list of numbers of course solves the first congruence. So let's figure out what remainders these numbers give us when divided by 8. Okay, so here we will write down the remainders when divided by 8. So let me call it remainders modulo 8. So I'll divide 10 by 8 and get a remainder of 2. If you divide 31 by 8, 31 is let's see, 24 is the nearest multiple of 8. So this gives a remainder of 7. 52, 8 6 are 48, and you're left with a remainder of 4, and so on. So let me write out the next few remainders. It's a 1, it's a 6, this is a 3, this is a 0, and a 5. Okay. So now you scan through this list and you find that the number 115 also satisfies the second condition that we want. So we also want n to satisfy n congruent to 3 mod 8, and of course that's exactly what we want, right? So the solution that we are interested in is the number n equals 115. Okay, so we have solved the problem here. N equals 115 is the smallest natural number which is congruent to 10 mod 21 and 3 mod 8. Okay, so that's sort of a brute force approach here. Now let's also ask the following modification of this question: what are all solutions? So suppose I want to know, so here's a modified problem: find all, let me say, integer solutions. So I'm even allowing negative integers now. Find all integer solutions n to the following congruences. So n must be an integer satisfying the very same two congruences: n congruent to 3 modulo 8, okay. So we have found one solution. We have found the smallest natural number solution to be 115. But now this question says, can you also find out all solutions? Okay, so all integer values would satisfy these very same congruences. So here's the key observation here. So here's the answer to this question. Suppose I have another solution. So I know one solution now. One solution has been found by our trial and error procedure to be 115. Okay. Now here's the key point. Suppose I have two solutions to these congruences. Okay, so suppose A and B are solutions. So suppose I have two solutions A and B. So A is congruent to 3 mod 8. And what are AB? Let me say AB are integers satisfying A congruent to 3 mod 8 and 10 mod 21. B satisfies the same relations. B is congruent to 3 mod 8 10 mod 21. What can one say about A and B? Okay. So let's do the following. Observe that if you subtract A minus B, so let me call the difference to be C, let C be A minus B. Now what do these properties imply in terms of C? Since A and B leave the same remainder modulo 8, A minus B, as we observed last time, must be a multiple of 8. So observe that C is in fact a multiple of 8. Okay. So 8 divides C. Similarly, A and B give you the same remainder on division by 21, implies A minus B must be a multiple of 21. Okay. So there are two properties that C satisfies, that C is divisible by 8 and by 21. Okay. So now let's see what this implies about C. So we claim that the fact that it's divisible by both 8 and 21 implies that in fact C is divisible by the product of 8 and 21. Okay. So the claim is that 8 into 21, so that's 168, in fact divides C. Okay. C is a multiple of 168. And let's prove this. So proof. So what do we know? We know that we are given that C is a multiple of 8 and that C is a multiple of 21. So 8 divides C, 21 divides C, and we want to conclude that C is a multiple of the product of these two numbers, okay, which is 168. So how do we prove this? Well, we start out by thinking of the prime factorization of P, of C. Okay, so recall we said last time that every integer has a unique prime factorization. So here's the prime factorization of C. So what are the various, so what does prime factorization mean? It can be written as a product of various prime numbers. An alternate way of expressing the same thing is to write C as a product of powers of the various distinct primes. So this is probably more familiar. You can write C as, so what are the various primes involved? So there's 2 power, so 2, 3, 5, 7, 11 and so on are the initial primes. So you can write C as some power of 2, so let's say 2 power alpha, times some power of 3 times some power of 5, 7 and so on. So imagine you write it as products of powers of all the prime numbers. Well, there can only be finitely many prime numbers involved. So there is some P power something. Okay. So I don't really care. Okay. So this is what C looks like, and what we know is that this expression is unique. Okay. You cannot have two different ways of writing C in terms of powers of primes. Now what do we know about C? We know that 8 divides C. Okay. 8 divides C means that, well, 8 is just 2 power 3. Okay. So observe 8 is 2 cubed. So C must be a multiple of 2 cubed. That's the thing that's given. So what does that mean? The prime factorization of C, here's the power of 2 that appears. The power of 2 had better be at least 3. Okay. This means that the power of 2 which appears must be at least a 3. Only then can 8 occur as a factor of C. Similarly, 21 is 3 times 7. So it's 3 power 1 times 7 power 1. C is a multiple of that. Implies that there must be at least 1 power of 3 and there must be at least 1 power of 7. Let's call it delta. Okay, and the rest of the things I can't say anything about, but at least I have concluded that the prime factorization of P must have, you know, at least a 2 cubed appearing, a 3 power 1 appearing and a 7 power 1 appearing. Okay. So the final expression for C therefore looks like 2 power, it's 3 plus something. So this power here is at least a 3. So let me think of it as there is surely a 2 cubed plus, in addition there may be you know, more powers of 2 involved. Similarly, there's at least a 3 power 1, there is at least a 7 power 1. Okay. These factors are guaranteed to be there, In addition, there could be other things. Okay, so let me say C therefore looks like this times D, where D is some natural number or some integer. Okay, so observe I didn't quite assume that C is a positive integer, so it could be that it is a negative number. Okay, but that doesn't affect any of the arguments here. So if C is negative, I'll just put a negative sign in front. Okay, but the final thing is true. If C is negative, I'll think of D as being negative. Okay, so anyway, so the point here being that this is 2 cubed, whereas that involves 3 and 7. Okay, so there's a special property of these numbers that we have used. So by the way, we have finally proved what we want. C therefore is written as 8 into 3 into 7. That's exactly 8 into 21 or 168. Okay, so we have finally written C as a multiple of 168, which is what we wanted to prove. Okay, so our claim is proved. Now observe, there is one important fact that we have used which really makes this whole thing work, which is that 8 and 21 don't have any common factors. Okay, so what makes this proof really tick is the following fact, that 8 and 21 have no common factors. Okay, and we'll see this point again. So what we have managed to do is two things. One, we have found one solution by a brute force approach, and then we have said the following, that any two solutions have the following relation, that their difference must be a multiple of 168. Okay, so let's complete the solution to the problem we asked. So we said find all integer solutions. Thus, here's the conclusion. How do you find all integer solutions to the original set of congruences? All you do is you take one solution and you add any multiple of 168 to it. That's the only way you can get another solution. So thus here's the conclusion. The set of all integer solutions to those two congruences is, well, the set is exactly the following. You take one solution, which is 115, plus any multiple of 168, okay, where k can be any integer. Okay, so here's the full set of solutions. And why is this true? Why does this follow from what we just proved? Remember, 115 is one solution, and suppose you have any other solution, okay, then the thing we just did says you take the difference between those two guys, then that difference is a multiple of 168. Okay, so you take 115 and any solution, take their difference, the result is a multiple of 168, which automatically means that the other solution had better have this form. It should look like 158 plus a multiple of 168, 115 plus a multiple of 168. Okay, so this is an important observation to make, that somehow the fact that these two numbers don't have a common factor is what plays a role here. So suppose we didn't want to actually find the solution, but maybe only wanted to show or be convinced that a solution always exists. Okay, so here's an alternate approach. Okay. And let's do the following. Let's write out. So I'll sort of frame the problem at the end, but for now let's consider the following. Let's take the same two numbers, 8 and 21. Observe 8 times 21 is of course 168, as we just said, and let's do the following. Let's make a list. So let's write down all the numbers. So of course I'm not going to be able to do this, but imagine that we write out a list of all numbers from 1 through 168, and now I'm going to make a table. Okay, so I'm going to write out all the numbers. Let's say I write out 1, 2, 3. Let me just go a little further, 8, maybe until 11. So imagine then that you keep going like this. So let's just pick some random thing in the middle. Let me say 27, and then I keep going all the way to 168. Okay, so 27 just some random entry somewhere picked in the middle. So here's the sort of table that I make. I write down all numbers from 1 through 168, and there are 2 more rows here where I will tabulate the following. I will look at the remainder when n is divided by 8 and by 21. Okay, so I'm going to extract 2 pieces of information. So I'm going to say n mod 8, by which I mean the remainder on division by 8, and n mod 21 is just the remainder on division by 21. Okay. So let's tabulate these values. So for instance, the number 1, when you divide it by 8 or 21, will just give you remainder 1. Okay. Similarly, the number 2 is just going to give you a 2. So nothing interesting happens at first. These numbers just give you back the same things as remainders, 7, 7. Now comes the first time when something interesting happens. The number 8 on division by 8 will give you a remainder of 0, whereas on division by 21, of course, just gives you the number 8. Okay, so 9 is remainder 1, 9. 10 is 2 on division by 8 and just 10 on division by 21, 3, 11. And let's look at, so and so on. Let's look at 27 on division by 8 is 3, because 24 plus 3 is 27, and on division by 21 gives you a remainder of 6. And you keep going till the very last fellow is a multiple of both 8 and 21. So when you divide by both 8 and 21, it gives you 0. Okay. So what you now have is the following. You have a table of numbers from 1 through 168 and a tabulation of their remainders modulo 8 and modulo 21. Now think of this as pairs of numbers. So the number 1 is sort of encoded by the pair 1, 1, 2 corresponds to 2, 2, and so on. So 27, for instance, corresponds to the pair 3, 6. 168 is the pair 0, 0. Okay, so I'm sort of encoding each number by the pair of remainders that I get on division by these 2 fellows. Okay, so think of it as some kind of code. Now here's the thing. Let's set up, so let's call these pairs, the set of these pairs as something. I'll call this set as T. Let it be the set of all pairs of numbers x comma y, where, remember, what can x be? It's a number between 0 and 7. Y is a number between 0 and 20. Those are the possible remainders on division by 21, right? So the pairs x comma y are these fellows. So that's the set T consisting of all such pairs. And the set S, let it just denote the set of all numbers from 1 through 168. Okay, so I construct these 2 sets. Now the first observation to make is that the set T also has 168 elements. Okay, just like the set S, which obviously has 168 elements, the set T also has the same number of elements. Okay, and why? It's clear, because the elements of T, so the elements of T are just pairs of numbers x comma y, and for the first entry x you have 7 or rather 8 choices, numbers from 0 to 7, and for the second entry y you have 21 choices. So the total number of choices, number of ways in which you can form pairs, is exactly 8 times 21. So it's clear cardinality of T is 8 times 21. Cardinality of S is of course the same. And now what we are doing here by means of this table or this encoding that I'm just talking about is defining a map. So here's the encoding map, if you wish, which is doing the following. It's taking any number between 1 and 168 and sort of encoding it by a pair of numbers x and y, where what is x? It's a remainder that you get on division by 8. Y is the remainder that you get on division by 21. So what is x? N is congruent to x mod 8 and y mod 21. X is between 0 and 7, y is between 0 and 20. Okay? Only then will it be an element of T. So here's the encoding map, if you wish. So let's give the encoding map a name. Let's just call it F. Think of this as the encoding. And now here's the natural question you can ask. What sort of properties does this map have? For instance, is this encoding a faithful encoding? In other words, can 2 different numbers lead to the same code? Okay? So I would ideally like codes to sort of be faithful, in the sense that I would want different numbers to be encoded as different things, right? So let's ask that question, is f a one-to-one function? Is f one-to-one? In other words, can it happen that I have two different numbers n and m which lead to the same answer here, to the same code? Can such a thing happen? Okay, so let's consider this. So let's call, suppose there are two numbers n and m. Suppose n is not equal to m. So what are n and m? N and m are elements of the set S which are not equal, and suppose it happens such that their codes are the same. F of n turns out to be the same as f of m. Then let's see what we can obtain from this. Okay. So what does it mean to say f of n is equal to f of m? It means, well, that n is congruent to 3 mod 8, but then m is also congruent to 3 mod 8. So n satisfies these two properties. Not 3, but rather if this is x comma y, then it means that n is congruent to x and y mod 21. And the same property is true for m, that m is also congruent to x. So recall, our congruence can also be written like this. M congruent to n just means that, you know, they both give the same remainder on division by 8. That was our definition. So they both give remainder x on division by 8. They both give remainder y on division by 21. And we have just done this argument. So this of course implies that the difference m minus n is divisible by both 8 and 21, and hence by 168, right? We just said this. So this is divisible by 8 and 21, hence by their product, which is 168. Okay, so we conclude that m and n must in fact differ by a multiple of 168, but observe that cannot happen because n and m to start with were elements of S. Okay, elements of S just means that they are numbers between 1 and 168. So n is a number between 1 and 168, m is a number between 1 and 168. So if you take their difference, well, what are the possibilities that, and they are not equal to each other, right? So the difference can't be 0. So the point is that the difference could never be a multiple of 168. Okay? So the only possibilities are n minus m. So maybe another way of saying this is, if I have two numbers between 1 and 168, what can I say about their difference, or the absolute value of their difference, if you wish? So you know, what's the farthest they can be? One of them can be a 1 and the other can be 168. That's the only way in which you will get a very large difference. So and that is just a 167 difference. Okay, so modulus of n minus m can be at most 167. Okay, so what does this mean? N minus m is therefore a number between plus 167 and minus 167, but it's also supposed to be a multiple of 168. So you know, the only way that can happen is if it is 0. Okay, but we also know that 168 divides n minus m. So the only multiple of 168 that lies in this range between minus 167 and plus 167 is the multiple 0. So this just means n minus m had better be the multiple 0, but that's a contradiction because we assumed that n is not equal to m. Okay, so what this implies is that f is in fact a one-to-one function, or in other words, this code is a faithful code. And what does it imply? Let's come back to this function here. So we've just concluded that yes, f is one-to-one. So this can't happen. So this fellow had better go to a different point. But now recall that both these sets have the same numbers of elements. Both have 168 elements. F is a one-to-one function. Automatically implies that f is an on-to function. Okay, because what is the image of S under this function? Well, every fellow here maps to a different point. So the total number of different points that you'll get in the image is exactly 168. Okay, so the image has size 168, but the set T also only has size 168. Okay, so the image had better equal the entire set T. Okay, so yes, and further this implies that f is also onto. So what does that mean? It means that this encoding function has the following property. No matter which x comma y you pick in T, okay, which means you pick any number x between 0 and 7, any number y between 0 and 20, you will always be able to find a number n between 1 and 168 such that n is congruent to x mod 8 and n is congruent to y mod 21. Okay. So let me just write the final conclusion here of this argument. So conclusion, f is onto implies the following: given any x and any y between 7 and 20 respectively, there exists a unique number n between 1 and 168 such that n is congruent to x mod 8 and y mod 21. Okay. So the original problem we asked of finding the case where x is 3 and this is 10 is only a special case, and there we explicitly found the value of n to be 115. More generally, no matter which pair you pick, okay, so you can just pick anything you want and you will always be able to find some number n which has that particular encoding. Okay. So it's a somewhat surprising fact at first, but here's a proof, a non-constructive proof, an existence proof, which tells you it can always be done. Okay. So what we look at next time is a way of actually doing this constructively in a somewhat more systematic fashion than just doing brute force.